Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning, Honorable Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs, Mr. Airlangga Hartanto, Mr. Wee Ee Cheong, Deputy Chairman and CEO, UOB, Mr. Frederick Chin, Head of Group Wholesale Banking and Markets, UOB, Mr. Hendra Gunawan, President Director, UOB Indonesia, Senior Management of UOB, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So first of all, I would like to convey regards from Minister Luhut. As you may already know, unfortunately, Minister Luhut could not attend this event for health reasons. But don't worry, Pak Luhut is currently in the recovery process. So let's pray and hope for the speedy recovery for Pak Luhut. So in this opportunity, I will deliver a speech that was prepared for Minister Luhut with the title of ASEAN Forging Ahead, Stronger Partnership Towards a Sustainable Growth. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN has a strategic role in the global economy. Despite the slowdown in several developed countries, ASEAN grows strongly and become one of the motors of global economic growth. ASEAN is economically resilient with a projected 4.6% of growth in 2023 and 4.9% in 2024. It is the fifth largest economy in the world, with a combined GDP of approximately USD 3.7 trillion and is home to more than 670 million people. However, ASEAN is faced with a number of challenges that could hamper future growth acceleration efforts. In the short term, ASEAN is faced with a weakening commodity prices, as most ASEAN countries still rely heavily on commodity-based exports. In addition, ASEAN economies are also affected by Chinese economic slowdown and the risk of recessions in the US and Europe, ASEAN's major trading partners. In the medium term, ASEAN is also faced with the US-China trade conflict, which affects the fragmentations of the world economy. And beyond that, ASEAN as a part of the global community is also faced with climate change issues that could trigger natural disasters and have a major impact on economic and social challenge. Despite these challenges, the ASEAN economy is still able to grow strongly. As I mentioned before, this year and next year, ASEAN is forecasted to grow higher than world average, 4.6 and 4.9% respectively. And this economic performance is the result of a success in attracting foreign direct investment in recent years. FDI into ASEAN countries continue to rise, with 2022 being the highest in the last 10 years. And most of these investments are in the financial and manufacturing sectors, which provide a greater added value. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia, as a member of ASEAN, also showed a strong economic performance. Not only we are able to grow strongly, we grew 5.3% last year and 5.2% last quarter, but we also have much lower inflation compared to most countries. Last month, our inflation is below 3%, and we also have a more fiscal discipline to other countries, as shown by our government debt that less than 40% of our GDP. In addition to that, despite rising Fed fund rate, our stock index and exchange rate showed a very stable performance. Indonesian economic growth is supported by a strong consumption recovery post-pandemic, double-digit investment realization, and increasing manufacturing output. And it accompanied with healthy external balance. We recorded 40 consecutive months of trade surplus, and we are able to manage our current account deficit. And we are optimistic that we can still record a surplus in our current account this year. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this strong economic performance is a result of economic transformation that has been happening in the past 9 years. One of which is through downstreaming program in nickel commodity. For many years, Indonesia only export in raw form the nickel ore. But now, not only we have moved to iron and steel, but we also starting to export lithium battery mineral, such as nickel matte and also MHP. And as a result, only from one product, our export increased by more than 10x in less than 10 years. In 2014, our nickel derivative products only reached USD $3 billion, but last year it's already reached like 34 billion US dollars. And this number will keep increasing as we move closer to lithium battery productions that can happen in the next years or the next 2 years. Of course, the benefits of downstreaming are very clear, not only giving added value to support our growth and exports. The downstreaming program also helps improving the regional equality in Indonesia. So it used to be Java dominates the FDI, but now majority of FDI goes to outside Java. So last year's 58% of our FDI goes to outside Java, and Java only like 42%. And, oh, there's no slide, yeah. I have a slide, but the downstreaming program helps strengthening the economic structure in the eastern part of Indonesia. So the share of manufacturing in Morowali, for example, in 2010 used to be only less than 10%. But last year's, the share of manufacturing is like 73%. The same thing happened in Halmahera. So it's the downstreaming start in 2019, but now the share of the manufacturing already reached like 61%, and it used to be only 3% in 2010. This change in the economic structure contributes to higher regional economic growth and people welfare compared to the period before downstreaming took place. So give you one example again, the growth in North Maluku increased by on average 12.9% compared only like 5.7% before the downstreaming period. And it helps increasing the GDP per capita, the welfare of the people by a lot in these regions. The other important aspect that not many people aware and not many people talk about is the technology transfer and human resource development. When we start this downstreaming program, we realized that we are lacking of metallurgy graduates to support the program. Every year, we only graduate 350 to 400 metallurgy students in all Indonesia, while the need is actually more than 1,000 students. That is why we also working with different stakeholders to increase the number of graduates and the capacity of our human capital. One of the examples, we are working with China Southern University and ITB to send our students to get master's and PhD degree in metallurgy program. We are targeting 1,000 master graduates and 500 of world's top engineers. It's gonna happen coming to Indonesia in the next few years. Not only that, if you visit Morowali, we also built a world-class research facility for metallurgy, and also we're planning to build the same top world-class research facility in ITB starting this year. So this to make sure that technology transfer happen to our people. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the economic impact that I have just told you comes from only one product, only from nickel, while we have other natural resources with more downstream potential that needed in the energy transition. Bauxite, for example, copper are needed to build EV, are needed to build also solar PV panels. So we also have palm oil and seaweed, for example, that can be processed not only into biofuel, but other products such as food, fertilizers, or even bioplastics. And we have these natural resources in abundance in our country. By having downstreaming in our natural resources, we believe that Indonesia will continue to strengthen its economic structure and economic complexity, and we can increase our growth beyond 5%. The projections from Harvard show that Indonesia can grow on average by 5.6% until 2030, but in government, we believe we can grow more than that, close to even more than 6%. So with that reasoning, to achieve our vision in 2045, becoming a high-income country and do it in a sustainable way, Indonesia will continue industrialize through downstreaming, accompanied by our efforts to do decarbonization to mitigate the impact of climate change. We also have other agendas, including digitalization, developing our infrastructure to enable interconnections of people, goods, and information, improving our human capital through education and making sure that equal development across Indonesia. Related to this sixth agenda, there is huge potentials for collaboration and partnership with the ASEAN countries. One example is on the EV. In achieving our climate targets, ASEAN needs to transition into electric vehicles and develop its ecosystem, and we have the capacity to do it. The region is already an important production base for automobiles, becoming the 7th largest automotive manufacturing hub worldwide. The other potential collaboration is in the development of the digital ecosystems. We should create economic opportunities for all through digital transformation, which enhance the role of SMEs in global value chains. A digital economic framework agreement in ASEAN will have a profound impact that could double the value of digital trade from currently estimated value of $1 trillion to $2 trillion by 2030. It will not just empower the SMEs, but also provide avenues for upskilling and reskilling the young productive population of ASEAN. And lastly, to support all these programs, ASEAN requires a huge amount of investment, especially in the green infrastructures. One of the research showed that we need a minimum more than $3 billion in infrastructure investment to support the achievement of sustainable economic growth, reduce poverty, and address climate change. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to close my speech, current indicators show that Indonesia right now is on the track to be a high-income country by 2045, and this is a result of economic transformation that has been done in the past 9 years. And moving forward, Indonesia has a concrete strategy. We understand now how we can achieve that target to develop through industrializations, decarbonization, interconnections, digitalizations, educations, and economic distributions in order to bolster economic growth in sustainable and equitable manner. Of course, Indonesia will work together with ASEAN in economic development and decarbonizations that will sustain in the decades to come. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam, Pak Rahmat. Thank you, and please